PM for the Masses podcast, episode 11. Stop hiring project managers with Andy Kaufman.
Hi, this is Andy Kaufman from the People and Projects podcast, and you're listening to the PM for the Masses podcast with Caesar Abade. Or maybe I should say, PM for the Masses podcast with Caesar Abade. How was that?
Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business. Write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Caesar Abade.
Learn from the experts. Think outside the box. Have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Hello, everyone. PM for the Masses podcast. I'm not sure. I think Andy was mocking me there. I'm not sure. No, he wasn't. Anyway, hello once again. It's another week, and this is the 11th episode of the PM for the Masses podcast. And again, my name is Caesar Abade, PMP, your host, and this is the podcast about project management and project managers. So, get ready to be entertained, educated, and inspired. And today's episode is a little bit longer than usual, but it's really packed with great things, so I hope you don't mind. So if you're listening during your morning commute to work, you might have to press pause when you get to work this morning and then finish the episode on your way back home. But I promise you, I would not do that to you if it wasn't worth it. It's a really special episode today. And today, I have my new friend, Andy Kaufman. And I promise I will not make any jokes or any references to Taxi or Saturday Night Live or anything like that. And I think I just made the reference right now. So sorry, Andy. I'm sure you're used to it, so I hope you don't mind. But jokes aside, Andy is a fantastic speaker. I mean, you listen to him, you just get all pumped. You can't help it. He's also an author and a project manager. And I'm a big fan of him and what he's doing. He's doing some great things. And today we'll talk about his idea that we should stop hiring project managers. It sounds kind of intriguing. It sounded intriguing to me when he proposed that topic, but he'll explain exactly what he means. And after that, I'm also going to ask him the now famous, project management for the masses 5 questions. The questions I ask guests who are project managers and who are doing great things and standing out. And Andy certainly fits the bill. And the tips that he's going to give me are really good. So I hope you stick around for that. And after my conversation with Andy, I will bring you a short chat that I recently had with Mr. Shim Maram, who will explain to us his awesome project that really has taken the PM blogosphere by storm, which is called PM Flashblog. So, without any further ado, let's get started.
Special guest coming up next. PMforthemasses.com. PMforthemasses.com.
Andy Kaufman, PMP, helps organizations around the world improve their ability to deliver projects and lead teams. His keynotes, workshops, and executive coaching services have reached tens of thousands of people from hundreds of companies, helping them deliver their projects, become more confident leaders, and deliver results. Andy is a certified trainer and also author of Navigating the Wings of Change, Staying on Course in Business and in Life, Shining the Light on the Secret, and an ebook entitled How to Organize Your Inbox and Get Rid of Email Clutter. He is the host of the People and Projects podcast, which provides interviews and insights to help listeners lead people and deliver projects. Andy is on the line with me today from my kind of town, Chicago. Hello, Andy. How are you?
Well, great, Caesar. It's great to be talking with you today.
Oh, I can hear it in your voice. You're just a rock star.
No. Just love what I do, just like you do, man. We're the same in that regard.
We're the same, yeah. Doing podcasts for project managers.
Yeah.
Rare breed.
Yeah. But we're not rare in the sense of loving what we do. I love to intersect with people that love what they do, and I can hear it in you when I listen to your podcast, Caesar. I can tell you love what you do.
Oh, the feeling is mutual. I love what you do, and you're a great presenter. Your podcast is top notch. So I'm really excited to have you on.
Thank you.
Now, Andy, we met through I don't even know how. I think it was through podcasting, I guess. But you have a great show, and you do a lot of keynote presentations, and you just did one that is called "Stop Hiring Project Managers."
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you about that, right? But before we go there, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got to be where you are today in the field of project management?
Sure. I grew up as a software developer. And so my background is, cutting code, and was promoted for all the wrong reasons into management. You know how that works sometimes, the halo effect, where someone's a reasonably good programmer. I wouldn't even say I was an amazing good programmer, but I was a reasonably good programmer. And a small company was bought out by another company, and a bunch of management people were fired. And so I was promoted into management. And so my background from a project management perspective was really through the technical ranks. In fact, I cannot tell you, Caesar, how many mistakes I made as a manager, wanting to be their friends and wanting to not delegate, do the work myself. And, so many mistakes that made. That led, though, after making enough mistakes, to, I really enjoy the managing and the leading side as much as the technical side. And so developed more of an interest in project management from there. And that eventually led to speaking at some conferences, and that led to some people coming up and saying, "Hey, do you do this for a living?" And I asked them, "You can do this for a living? How does that work?" And so hung out with people that were doing it for a living and learned more about it. And in 2001, started a company that we help people primarily in North America, but I've worked at organizations on every continent except Antarctica to help them improve their ability to deliver projects and lead teams. So usually the presenting issue is we stink at delivering projects, or we want to get better at delivering projects, or we've got some frontline managers that need some help when it comes to getting better at leading. It's usually somewhere in the intersection between people and projects, which actually led to the name of the podcast.
Right. Very good. So it seems like you work with project managers and in the project management environment all over the world. So what do you see when it comes to the PM culture right now? This last episode was about social media and how things are changing when it comes to communication and stuff. What do you see happening?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. This is maybe a couple years back, maybe 3 or 4 years back now, but I had Ed Schein as a podcast guest. Now, I got to tell you, if the name doesn't sound familiar, it didn't sound familiar to me at the time. Little did I know that this guy, contrary to what you and I have been saying, this guy really is a rock star. I mean, this guy, he coined the term corporate culture. So MIT guy. And I mean, I felt like I was talking to Yoda. I think he's in his 80s now, but he just had so much wisdom about culture. But one of the things that I took from the discussion, and I'll just never forget it, is a formula that A plus B equals C, culture being the C. So attitudes plus behaviors equals culture. And, your question is, what am I seeing regarding project management culture? When I started my business back in 2001, I have to say I ran into a lot of attitudes and behaviors that were effectively ready, fire, aim.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that there wasn't any plan, but it was ready, fire, aim. Let's just go. In fact, one organization, if I said the name, everyone would recognize it, but it's not a positive thing, so I won't say it. But in their credo, up on the wall, as I'm walking in to teach project management, Caesar, out on the wall, what does it say? Part of the credo is we will, how do you say it? We will plan less and execute more. That was part of their credo. And I was talking to a director at a different company, and his line was, the truth is we just don't value planning. We don't value at it. But if you and I and everyone listening, we know this through experience. If we look at project success rates, I mean, that philosophy is really wearing thin. The margin of error is just too small now. And so, interestingly, that same company with that credo, I looked it up recently. They actually got rid of that line. that said we would plan less and execute more. It says now, and this is a quote, everything we do, we build on a strong network systems and process foundation. And so I would say overall that I'm definitely seeing more of a culture of we can't wing it, that project management has the potential to be a real solution. And, maybe other behaviors and attitudes, in fact, maybe I'd say attitudes specifically around that would be a big one would be focus equals outcomes. One of my favorite interviews from this last year was with Jody Thompson, who wrote a book called Why Work Sucks and How to Fix It. And not only is it a clever title, but she's basically, all that matters is outcomes. And I think project managers, we get that, that percent complete is cool, but what is the actual result? Is it actually done? And so I've definitely seen that as an attitude of places that are trying to get better at delivering culture that the focus is much more on outcomes. Definitely more when it comes to culture of project management is risk management. And I know you had some discussion with Carl about that, and it's almost impossible to talk about project management without talking about risk management. And so definitely seeing that as part of culture increasingly. I guess increasing attitudes and behaviors around trying to balance capacity and demand. How do we know that we can even take this on? Or what is the impact if we take this on? What's our forecasted demand in the future? And so definitely seeing a lot of more focus on that. And that actually, I found an interview with, I think his name is Bill Catlett. I really didn't necessarily like the book that much. It's called Contented Cows Still Give Better Milk. kind of a cheesy title, I might say. But the one thing I took from the book was that every organization has discretionary effort that's left on the table. A lot of times we think we need more people. A lot of times it's not that we need more people. It's we need to tap into this discretionary effort. And so I guess part of the culture, the attitudes I'm seeing is how do we tap into that? How do we balance this capacity and demand? And then I guess the last thing comes to mind when it comes to maybe an attitude of culture that I'm seeing is not that planning removes risk completely or guarantees success, but that planning increasingly helps our confidence. It's not a cocky overconfidence, but if we have a process, it can increase our confidence in being able to deliver. So just enough. I'm definitely seeing whether it's agile or if it's an organization that's maybe not agile, but they want to get better at it, but they want just enough process. Just enough, the basic planning steps to help build confidence. So I would say those are some key things I'm seeing as part of cultures of organizations these days about PM.
And you see that as a change or just a greater focus on those areas?
I'd say definitely greater. I don't know if it's as much as a line going across, but for example, 10 years ago, I'd be sitting in a meeting and listen to a salesperson say, "Yep, we're going to deliver X million dollars of revenue on this," or an executive that says, "We're going to cut this many $1 million out of the business." And they could say that. I mean, they're basically promising we're going to solve world hunger, and they could end up delivering a peanut butter sandwich at the end of it, and there was no accountability. And so I would say, now this is not everybody, but I would say there's an increasing focus on, listen, if you say you're going to cut that cost out of the business, I need flush. There need to be less bodies in that group as a result of this. No more funny numbers here on productivity. And so definitely an increased focus. That'd be probably more on the focus on the outcomes would be an example. And so for some organizations, maybe it is new. Others, it's just an increase. But I would say it's probably more of just an increased focus.
So you still think it's a good time to be a project manager, or what do you think?
Oh, this is an awesome time to be a project manager. I'm not just saying that because I'm in the industry. I take it from people that I interact with. I do a lot of teaching of project management usually it's within a company where they have it, but I do a lot of kind of open enrollment to help people get certified. There's an increasing demand for the title. There's increasing demand for people that are certified by it. I mean, if you look at the surveys, the average salaries are great, but even beyond that, the thing that really gets me excited about being a project manager these days is that the challenges are so great. I mean, there's just I had a guy on my staff. This is almost 20 years ago now, but yeah, we're in software, and he goes, "You know what really stinks? All the good software projects are done. There's no more fun projects anymore." It's kind of like that. It's probably not a true story about the patent office guy back in 1899. That all the everything's been patented. Nothing will be patented again. But I mean, when this guy told me this about all the projects, I mean, that was before mobile. That was before the cloud, pre-Google Glass and wearable technologies. I mean, the fact is demand for innovation and delivery, it's only going to get higher. And PMs, I just feel like we are uniquely equipped to be part of the solution. So from an awareness of the need for the role and the opportunity to influence outcomes, the demand for it, I just think it's a great time for someone to be pursuing this track.
Yeah, that resonates with me a lot. You even use the same term that I use, uniquely equipped. This is and that's why I could have done a show for anybody, but my podcast is for project managers because they're my favorite people.
Yeah.
They get things done. They know how to
Right.
break things down and get results, like you said.
Yeah.
It's such it's rare these days. We're superficial. Culture is it's bite-sized like morsels and Twitter, and it's quick, and nothing gets done. But we can do that. So
true. I just interviewed Scott Birkin yesterday. He's got a new book out called The Year Without Pants. And it's not only a very clever title, but it's a really engaging read, really, really engaging read. And he has a chapter in there that quotes Steve Jobs talking about real artists ship. Real artists don't talk about it. Real artists ship. They eventually have to. I think the point is, a lot of times you hear the movie directors say this, that you don't really finish a movie, you have to release it because you can keep tweaking it. You can keep getting better and, tighter edits and things like that. And I think some of us can relate to that depending on the projects that we work on, that, there's always another bug to fix, or there's always something we can make better, but we eventually have to deliver it. Well, the cool thing about our industry is we get to ship. We get to get things done. And that's just, I just love that we can do it instead of just talk about it.
Mm-hmm. So, Andy, I'm going to ask you a question here about a little bit of maybe a paradox. How do you see the balance between the focus on shipping and getting things done and stepping forward with the need to plan? Because there are mixed messages out there. There's the message of just get started, put something out there, see if it sticks, fail fast, fail cheap. How do you see that as compared to we need to plan and spend the time and the resources doing that?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant question because I think it gets to a fundamental, I guess we could even say, objection about project management that some people have. And I guess I don't hear it regularly, but deep down, I think people feel this in their heart, and that is project management. The dirty little secret is project management doesn't really work because it presupposes that you can know everything up front, and then you execute it, and then you deliver it, which is why it doesn't work, because you can't know everything up front, right? So that's that demand for we have clarity on everything, and since you can't have that, it doesn't work. I have to tell you, the thing that most freed me up on this is the concept within the PMBOK guide called rolling wave planning or progressive elaboration. And once I really got my arms around that, I'll tell you, that just helps so much. So the point is that they're exactly right. We cannot know everything up front. And so we can use that as an excuse to not put stakes in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with a group of inventors, which was really a fun engagement. And they're like, this is basically what they said, Caesar. Our management is a bunch of idiots. Because they're saying, go into a room for 2 months and invent something, but use project management. Which, you'd be like, they're like, how can we do that? We don't even know what we're going to end up with. How can we use project management? And so where we led the conversation to was this idea of progressive elaboration is, well, do you know what you're going to do tomorrow? And they're like, yeah, we actually have some pretty good ideas what we'll do tomorrow. All right. Well, let's not try to get down to that. What are you going to do every 5 minutes? But let's put some stakes in the ground. It's a little bit like the 880 rule. We're going to put every 2 weeks we're going to have a milestone. And we didn't call them sprints. We didn't call it agile. But basically, what are some expected deliverables that we might anticipate at this point? Because really, what their management wanted was some predictability. They didn't want to get to the end of 2 months and say, "We got nothing." They want to know, is there some predictability? Is there something, or we can kill it early? And so the idea of progressive elaboration or rolling wave planning is that a plan often has a lot more detail up front and a lot less detail further out. A little bit like the headlights of a car at night. I mean, you and I can't see. I mean, you and I might be able to see the next, 100 meters pretty well, or maybe the 30 meters, something like that. But we can't see. We're not going to see 100 miles down the road, right? We're not going to see that. Although with Google Maps or MapQuest, or not Apple Maps, but the other ones we might be able to see. But the point is, we can put together a framework. We can put together milestones or a model, and then progressively elaborate as we know more. Where I've gotten myself, in big trouble is when I developed this completely articulated plan and assumed that it would work. And I think one of the things we learned the hard way, in fact, I learned this from a guy who's on my staff, a former Vietnam vet. His line was, the project schedule is the schedule for exactly how the project will not occur. And so the way I balance that is I don't use that as an excuse to not put together a schedule, not to put together a plan. You have to put together a plan because the business demands some level of predictability, or what can we anticipate when. But you never assume that the plan's going to work. And that's why we have baseline, so we can measure against it, not because it's going to go like the baseline, but if we don't have the baseline, I mean, it's a baseline to me is like the white lines on the side of the road or the bumps on the side of the road. Caesar, what are you supposed to do when you hit the bumps on the side of the road?
Go back into the road.
No, stop texting, man. That's what you're supposed to do. Stop texting. Yeah, right. You're exactly right. You're supposed to, and that's a lot easier to get back on the road when you're just kind of hitting those bumps. But if you don't have the baseline, you're on the shoulder, you're in the ditch, you're in the field, you're in the lake in the field, and you're like, how did we get this far behind? Well, no, we know how we got this far behind. One day at a time, like Fred Brooks said. How's a project get a year behind? One day at a time. And so assume the project plan won't work. And so we have to have the baseline of stakes in the ground to measure against. And we progressively elaborate as we know more. That's the only way I've been able to reconcile it there.
Yeah. And we study project management and we hear about that. But when it clicked for me was when I was reading Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Yeah.
And he has the weekly review thing. Like, you plan your things, your personal projects, but once a week you need to look at them and see, okay, what progress have I made? Do I need to tweak things? Do I even care about this goal that I set for myself?
Yeah, right. Is it even relevant anymore? Yeah.
And then this applies to to large scale projects as well. With the progressive elaboration, as you said, just and to have the roadmap so you know where you should be working on today. Because I'm sure you've heard this before. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right?
Yeah. All you have to do is go visit the Herding Cats blog and enjoy the debate on no estimates to catch some of the tension between, listen, we can't estimate, so why should we estimate? Mm-hmm. To who in the world is going to give you money if you can't have some level of predictability?
Right.
And one of my mentors taught me sometimes it's a problem to fix or solve. Other times it's a tension to manage. Mm-hmm. And that bit of advice has been so helpful for me, Caesar, because sometimes I want to go and fix that, but we're faced with uncertainty. We're faced with ambiguity. We're never going to be able to fix the fact that there's ambiguity. It's a tension to manage. And when is it that we've overplanned and it's not really we're not getting a return for that planning effort? And when is it that we've underplanned and the truth is it's just a facade and we're just winging it? And so that tension, I think, is a tension to manage, not necessarily a problem to solve.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. That's great. Now, so I think we both agree that project managers, especially in this culture that you described us, they're They're really great and awesome. But so why did you give that speech? Stop hiring project managers.
Yeah. Well, I have
to ask you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I have a great respect for people that come up with snappy titles. Like I was driving by a local college recently, and they were advertising a class on the outside. And what was it? It was "Working with You is Killing Me." I thought that's a great name for a title. I guess there's a very popular book that I haven't really read, but I guess the class is based on that. But I guess ultimately what I was looking for was a provocative title to get across the point that we really need more project managers. I mean, and yet, how about this for a fundamental question? Can you hire enough project managers? And there's a quote from one of the founding fathers of the U.S., John Adams, that basically, I'm paraphrasing. Basically, you can't hire enough police or military people to ensure peace in a country. Right? We can certainly see that in plenty of places around the world. You can't do it. And same in the U.S., same in Canada. His point was, I think his quote was, "Our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Basically, you can't hire enough police people to have a peaceful society. Well, it sounds kind of philosophical, maybe more than I wanted to here, but you know what? You can't, I can't, the people listening to us can't hire enough project managers to successfully deliver 100% of our projects. So one of the key premises of the keynote was, what if project manager isn't a title? What if instead everybody's a project manager? I'd say probably one of my favorite podcast interviews from this calendar year was with Dan Pink about his book "To Sell is Human." Just came out at the beginning of the year, and the basic idea of "To Sell is Human" is that Cesar, you're a salesperson, and by the way, you are an awesome salesperson. I love how you use the podcast to leverage your own learning, and you certainly help other people get a voice as well. But you know how to use this. Well, you're a salesperson. I'm a salesperson. Everyone listening to us is a salesperson. Now, somebody listening to us might feel like they have to go take a shower after thinking of them as a salesperson. But if to sell is human, I would argue that to deliver is human, and that we need to look at project management just like we look at time management. GTD is applicable to everybody, right? that's not just for project managers. It's for administrative assistants. It's for everybody. Decision-making skills, influencing skills. Do we have a title called decision maker or conflict manager or time manager? No, they're just basic professional skills. And if you look at what project management is at its essence, and you alluded to this earlier, at its essence, project management is, how do you go from idea to delivery? That's really all it is. It's not thick methodology documents, although it could be turned into that. But ultimately is, how do you go from talking about it? How do you go from having this idea to actually go off and deliver it? And that's why I just believe fundamentally, and that was the essence of the keynote, is you can't hire enough project managers. What you need to do is hire project managers, but also develop this expertise so that everybody understands it. So it's not just for those select few people.
So wait. So you're saying that everybody should be a project manager on a team? How does that work?
It's not that everybody has to. So this is where we sometimes get stuck with the title. Right. For example, in Agile, this is a tough thing. All right, so I'm a Scrum Master. So does that mean I'm the boss? No, I'm not the boss. But what do I need to do? And so if we reframe project management as not just the title. So this is not a call for don't have the title anymore. I think we need the title. That's fine. But if you rely on the people having the title as the only people having that competence, I think it's a problem. I think we need to look at, it doesn't matter if it's an administrative assistant, if it's a senior executive, if it is a business analyst, if it's a salesperson, every one of those people have to deliver something. Our job is to go from, this is your assignment to deliver something. Now, we maybe don't call it a project. Like I remember David Allen class I went to a long time ago. One of the things he talked about is if there's more than one task, if there's more than one to do, it's a project, right? And so we're all doing projects, whether we realize it or not. And so my point, I think my bigger point is not that we don't need the title. We need it, and we need to hire people into that. But it needs to be a basic competency, and not that everybody has to be a PMP. But I had a general manager of a manufacturing organization going through an exam prep class recently because he's like, I want to do it from the credibility perspective that people see that I understand how to deliver. And I think if we will broaden our understanding that a project management class is not something you just send your project managers to, that every one of us, if somebody hasn't gone to a time management class in the last 5 years, you need to go. If you haven't gone to a presentation skills class or an influencing skills class, or read a book or listen to a podcast or something to build up those skills, we need to be refreshed on that. And I would argue that project management is the exact same thing. I don't know of a title that wouldn't benefit from some increased competency of project management, because we all have to deliver.
I see. Now, so you were saying that we should maybe teach project management principles, at least to everyone in an organization. But some people say that the ability to lead and deliver is it's almost like a talent that you're born with, and it's hard to teach. You either get it or you don't. So what do you say?
Yeah, it's funny. There was a debate on some LinkedIn group. I don't remember which one it was, but it was early this year. It was back in February, I seem to recall. And I got to tell you, Caesar, I was surprised by the number of people who argued actually pretty vigorously that you cannot teach project management. Effectively, they were saying you either get the gene or you don't. And I'd have to guess if that would be a sample, then I have to guess there's a fair number of people that are listening to us that would go, yeah, that's right. You either kind of get it or not. Because all of us have certainly seen people that were put at the wheel of a project and they just drove it over a cliff. And you just look at that and you're like, that person was born for another purpose. They were not designed to be a project manager. But I got to tell you, there is an overwhelming body of research that says we can learn to get better at just about anything, given enough motivation. I mean, that's a big part of it, but effort as well. Somebody I've had on the podcast twice her name is Heidi Grant Halverson, and she's the director of the Motivational Science Lab at, I'm pretty sure it's Columbia University, and she studies motivation and success. And for a researcher, she's amazingly practical. But she just goes on and on about the research that says, listen, we so limit ourselves. I would guess if I said, Cesar, are you good at math or not? I mean, you're like an electrical engineer, is it?
Right.
Yeah. All right. So you'd go, yeah. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you wouldn't have survived your first class in college, right?
Right.
But we all know somebody that goes, oh no, I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at art, or I'm not good at whatever. And she's got really compelling research that talks about how we self-limit ourselves all the time. I'm not good at that. And the problem with that is it holds us back from our own potential. But extend that into the workplace if we're in a leadership role. We limit the potential of the people around us. In fact, my favorite definition of leadership is maximizing the potential of ourselves and the people around us. And so if we believe that, I can't do that. Well, that person, they could never do this. We limit the people around us. I mean, most of us, or many of us, I'm sure, have heard the stories of where teachers were told, right, in this class that you're going to teach here, this set of students over here, they are above average. In fact, they're gifted. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the school year, those kids actually did better. But it was a completely blind assignment. None of them were better than the others. But when the teachers looked at those students as better, the students actually performed better because of how the teacher interacted with them. Well, this mindset that you can't teach project management, I think, is a dangerous mindset, because it can go into, well, I could never get better at project management itself. I could never get better at my influencing skills. You're going to do a webinar on blogging. Oh, I can't write. I can never figure out WordPress. My goodness. I mean, my 12-year-old has figured out WordPress. I mean, so we self-limit ourselves with the belief that we can't get better. Now, I will never be, I'm a Chicago guy. I will never be a Derrick Rose or a Michael Jordan when it comes to basketball. Mm-hmm. Never. Although, I did play in college.
You look pretty tall.
I got a little bit better, but I'd never make it to the pros. But that doesn't matter. I don't even want to. But listen, if I wanted to get better at my free throws, you know what it took to get better? It maybe watching some videos, maybe talking about people, but it was doing free throws, shooting free throws. It was actually doing it. And so how do you get better at project management? How do you teach project management? The classroom can help for sure, but you got to do it, right? You got to do it. And that's why I love your emphasis. I hear it from you all the time, Caesar. You got to stretch yourself, volunteer for that opportunity, try it, experiment with it. If that's probably one of the biggest lessons I feel like I continue to learn is you got to experiment with it. You got to try it. And all of a sudden you might find you actually like it, And so anyway, real quick, before I end that one, I mentioned Heidi Grant Halverson. She has an ebook that's available at least on Amazon and the Harvard Business Review website called 9 Things That Successful People Do Differently. And I seem to recall it's like $5 US. So it's not a very expensive ebook, but it encapsulates a lot of what I briefly mentioned in a lot more detail. But still, you can read it in about an hour or two. It's a very easy read and has the research behind it. And so if you feel like you can't learn fill in the blank, or you don't buy what I just said about you can't teach project management, which, by the way, I agree with if somebody's not motivated, if they don't want to. I totally get that. But that 9 Things That Successful People Do Differently is a great resource.
Very good. I'll have a link to that book on the show notes.
Yeah.
Episode 11. Now, okay, so let's say I agree with you, which I do, but and you convinced me, and now I need to, let's say I want to start maybe teaching people in my organization, let's say. So if you had to boil it down to the essence of what people need to plan a project, what would you include?
Yeah, it's funny. I will teach anything from a 45-minute keynote to in project management. Sometimes it goes to a 3-day class, but most people don't need a 3-day class. And if I had to really boil it down, Caesar, I think I would narrow it down to 4 things from a high level. And I like to just use an acronym there because it helps me remember. It helps other people remember it. The DROP, D-R-O-P. And the D of drop is just done. What does done look like? And although it seems like that ought to be a pretty obvious answer, all of us have been on projects where it is not clear what done looks like. In fact, I was at a financial services company just earlier this year where there's a lot of regulatory stuff going on in the U.S., and I'm sure you've got it up there in Canada in your industry increasingly, but being in the financial services industry and that industry kind of led our way into our implosion back in 2008. There are some significant fines. Basically, what these project managers are telling me, we've got fines in the millions of dollars, but the law is very shades of gray, not black and white. We don't know what done looks like, is basically what they're saying. And so they were losing hair over this. They were really, really worried. And so one of the best things we can do as a project manager is try to get clarity on what does done look like. And we could talk for hours or days on that, but a key step that I found on this is I got to know who my stakeholders are. I love in the 5th edition of the PMBOK guide, how they even not only just expanded stakeholder management as a knowledge area, but even refined the definition of a stakeholder. It used to be people who are actively involved or their interests are affected for the good or bad. But now it's they either are affected, they could affect us, or they perceive they're affected. If there's even a remote perception that they're affected, we need to think about them. And so that understanding who they are and what our deliverables are, I guess this keeps getting pounded into me project after project after project. It's related to that Jody Thompson, Why Work Sucks and How to Fix It comment about outcomes. Done. What does done look like? Get to the deliverables. Get to the tangible deliverables, because these things don't come out of thin air. And I was recently at a meeting at a nonprofit that I volunteer at. And, anytime you work with volunteers, man, they're like, ideas are flying across. We should do this. We should do this. And, easy for them to say because they don't have to do it maybe, right? And this poor person who was employed by the nonprofit, I could just see him getting overwhelmed. But I just pulled him to the side and I said, hey, you know what? Get us to deliverables. What is it that has to be procured or produced? And let's get clarity on that. And then what does done look like? Well, done is those deliverables are done. And, there's certainly more with what's in scope, what's out of scope, and measurable objectives and things like that. But I guess this was reinforced to me recently at a client where they said, well, here's part of our vocabulary. They said, is it done or is it done? Because at their company, you could say, yeah, I'm done. They're like, but is it done? Like, no, I need to test. And so get clarity on what is done. So drop, D-R-O-P. The D is done. What does done look like? The R is the route. How will we get there? And I don't care if it's agile, if it's waterfall, if it's a variation like Kanban, if you're Post-it notes or you're using Clarity. I don't care what it is. The tool in this case doesn't matter. Is there a reasonable plan to deliver? If I audit a project these days, Caesar, I'm just looking for two things. Is there a reasonable understanding of what they have to deliver? And that's the D. And is there a reasonable plan to deliver it with just enough detail? And are there milestones tied to deliverables? And as simple as that sounds, you know what I find a lot of times is the reasonable understanding, kind of fuzzy, and the route, a lot of fantasy about how to get there. And so done. What does done look like? What's the route? How are we going to get there? The O of the obstacles, of understanding the risks. What are the obstacles? Or we could say opportunities. I mean, I appreciated the fact that Carl could get excited about risk management. I mean, that gives me goosebumps. Somebody that gets excited about risk management. but to not ignore the fact that there are opportunities out there. But in practice, a lot of times what we really are focused on are those obstacles. What is it that could derail our ability to deliver? What if, Caesar, what if people just did a better job of defining what does done look like, deliverables, and did risk management? What if we just did that to get a little bit more foresight on what could go wrong? I mean, that would be huge, at least for some groups. That would radically change how they would go about their projects. And then the P is progress. How will we manage the execution? How will we know whether we're on track or not? How will we keep people informed? How are we going to deal with changes? During progress, how capturing lessons learned as we do that. I mean, there's so much more we could talk about for sure. But what I found is if I have to boil it down to the essence, and I've got like 10 minutes with somebody or less, and when I get across, like, do this, and at least this will help you, even with the progress, inevitably in our business, we'll have people say, well, I'm 50% done. In fact, there was a Harvard Business Review article, a blog post within the last year that said one of the best ways to track percent complete. So if somebody asks what percent complete, you say, what you do is you calculate what percent of the time have you used up. And so if it was allocated for 2 months and you've been executing for a month, then you're 50% complete. The rest of the article I thought was quite brilliant, but that is terrible advice. Yeah. That's like terrible advice because it could be I didn't touch it for that first month.
Right.
And so tying deliverables to milestones and then tracking progress against that, then when I'm saying I'm 50% done, I've got something I can show. And whether it's earned value, whether it's some other method of just getting the agreement up front that this is how we track it. So anyway, that's the drop planning process, Caesar.
Very cool. Another way that I've seen how people measure progress, especially in construction, is money spent as compared to the total budget, which is also flawed because you can be completely out of missing the mark and spending all the money. You don't even know.
Yeah. So it's not like it isn't relevant, but it certainly isn't like a definitive a measure of progress. Like it's helpful information to know.
Right.
We've spent all of our money. That's helpful, but it doesn't mean we're done. Yeah.
Right. Very good. This was awesome. So basically, what you're saying is we should not stop hiring project managers.
No, that's right. But let's think of it as a fundamental skill. I mean, just think of that person over in HR that's rolling out benefits in the fall of this year. It's a project, right? Mm-hmm. What if they had a better idea of what are the deliverables? Who are the stakeholders? Who am I impacting? And they thought about that more. What if salespeople, before they went out and promised the moon, they would actually think through of, this is going to impact my IT department, or if our IT people thought about the operations people, or what if we had a better awareness of all this? This is not just the title. This is basic competency that we need to think of as time management. It's just it's another way of saying getting things done. It's another way. And that's completely appropriate, applicable to everybody.
Very good. And I did read To Sell is Human by Dan Pink, and fantastic.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm actually looking to get him on the show as well. I haven't heard back yet, but
I'd say especially the first half of the book I thought was really good. I think I thought it kind of got a little scattered after that, but it's still a good. Actually, quite frankly, I don't know if you see this, but a lot of books have got about a good 120 pages of content, and the rest is to get it to 250.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just saying. So.
I actually I listened to it audible format, so it's, to me it sounded more like a 5-hour lecture. So I did.
Well, listen to Dan Pink. You could do that all day.
He's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be a long interview. I hope you don't mind, but I'm sure the listeners are enjoying this. But I'd like to get to the 5 questions with you, if you don't mind.
Sure. Oh no,
because
that'd be great.
You're doing some fantastic work out there, and what you just shared here is fantastic. I hope I didn't spoil your keynote. If you want to reuse this again,
no. In fact, if someone would like, I'll give you a PDF of the slides from it, and if somebody wants to download it from your site, they can do it. So I'd be glad to. That's not a problem.
All right, I'll put a link to that as well on the show notes for this episode.
Yeah.
Now, Andy, you are all over the place. If you go in iTunes and search for project management, which I do often to see if I'm doing better, your face is right there. And the Google searches and you just you pop up everywhere.
Are you sure you're not looking for the dead comedian Andy Kaufman? Because he's really everywhere.
But you know what? That's saying something, because he's there's competition there for Andy Kaufman on Google, and you're not doing too bad. That's awesome. Like, there's not a whole lot of Cesar Abades out there, so I'm have that advantage over you, but.
Maybe there's a comedian somewhere in Fiji, maybe that's got your name. I don't know.
Not a whole lot of Italian Lebanese that were born in Brazil. All right. So Andy, tell us a little bit about the reason. So you mentioned that you started as a software engineer or a programmer, coder, and then you got promoted. But what made you start blogging and podcasting and being more out there and becoming a well-known project manager?
Yeah, well, it's actually somewhat related to the blessing and the curse of a name like Andy Kaufman, in that I can't put out a billboard, or even today if I do a workshop, almost inevitably someone will come up and go, "Oh, taxi," and it doesn't bug me. And in fact, somebody once said, "Don't you hate having that name?" I'm like, no, I mean, it's memorable, I suppose, so I don't care, but I can't put up a billboard that will speak for food. It just won't work with the name. And so one of the things I just realized is, well, what are some ways to get exposure? And the more I learned about marketing is really more about awareness than selling. Selling is trying to close a deal. Marketing is awareness. And so one way to not only get awareness, but also to add value, is to create content. So whether it's articles, whether it's books, whether it's speaking at a conference or podcasting, all those are ways to add value as well as increase awareness. And so the podcast specifically, because I kind of gave the background on kind of how I got to doing what I was doing from a job, but the podcast specifically was based on an interview. I was interviewed by a guy over in the UK. And after the podcast, I'm like, man, that was kind of fun. and the geek in me was like, I think I could do that. I love media, and I'm excited. I've got audio and video waveforms in front of me and stuff. And so I just thought, the geek in me thought it'd be fun. But I got to tell you, little did I know, I had no clue at the time of the adventure that it would become. And in the years since starting it, I have learned so much, and I trust the listeners have as well. But I got to tell you, I feel like I am student number one, because you have to figure out who the guests are. You got to read their stuff enough to be able to understand it and not come off as a blubbering idiot, right, when you're interviewing them. And I never want to give the person's stuff away. So I want to figure out, well, what's enough that the person can kind of incent people to go off and buy their book, if they would find it value. So enough that they could judge, would this be valuable to me? So I have exponential learning as a result of the podcast. But it all started, I'd say, as an experiment. It started as an experiment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's I couldn't agree more. And you know that I know that because
I know. Yeah, that's what I love. I feel like you are very transparent about the fact that you're just learning right along with the rest of us. I love that.
Yeah. As you said, it's student number one, front row seats.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, all right. So you decided that that would be a good idea, but a lot of people decide that. A lot of people think that, okay, I should blog or I should podcast or do this and that, or write the book. So what steps did you take? I mean, what was the first thing that you did, and how did you get to do that? Because that sometimes is the biggest obstacle.
Yeah, it's although I think you're right for the most part. I honestly think there are a lot of people, and they're listening to us right now, who goes, well, I've heard it from other people. You speak at conferences, you write a book, you do, you start a blog, but they don't do it, and so. A phrase, actually a word I try to keep as a trigger in my mind, Caesar, is the word wish. And anytime I say the word wish, I just try to catch myself. And I'm not perfect at this, and I fail regularly at it. But when I say the word wish, it's like, no, time out, stop. Either do it or don't do it, but don't wish. And I think too many of us live in this wish world. Well, I wish I had time to start a blog, or I wish I knew more about it, or I wish I could write a book. I think I've got some ideas. I got to tell you, conferences. I mean, just about every person you interview will mention they start speaking at conferences if they're doing it as a consultant. Conferences are dying for content, and they want practitioners. They'd far rather get a practitioner than someone who's doing it just to sell some books. And so, find a conference. And I particularly love the conferences that SQE puts on. They've got like better software, agile development. I love the conferences. They're well run. They add a lot of value, great speakers, and I'm, despite me being there as well, I'm saying, I mean, they're just very good. So, speaking of conferences, really changed things for sure. The first book I wrote changed as I'm trying to remember if it was Carl who said it. One of your previous interviews said how when all of a sudden your name is on when you're your name, comma, author of, it reframes it in people's mind. And I mean, I've got a friend, I hope he's not listening to us. He's written like 5 books on using lulu.com. The guy can barely spell his last name. Okay. I think 2 or 3 of the covers are just a solid color with nothing on the outside. But in this world of self-publishing, anybody can write a book. There's absolutely no excuse if you want to. If you're motivated, there's no excuse not to write a book. Literally, it's under $300, and with print on demand, you don't have to have a basement of books and give it as Christmas gifts for the next 3 years. It's just anybody can do this. Yeah. And so for me, when I wrote a book, and I've written 3 now, it made a difference. All of a sudden, when during keynote introductions, it was Andy Kaufman, author of. I've learned just because someone is an author doesn't mean they're an expert. I've learned if someone says they're an expert, be wary, because most people who are experts don't say they're experts. But by writing a book, it does reframe it in someone's mind as knowing more for some reason. And by far, blogging has been part of it, but I'm not an active blogger because I find I can deliver personally more value with the podcast. And so the podcast, I mean, I think the first episodes, it was me and my mom and dad listened, and I think my wife listened, but I'm not sure. And so, but I think it's a much more engaging media when it comes to being able to reach people and add value. So those were definitely steps to the breakthrough.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, especially with the podcasting being more effective. I also blog a little bit, but I prefer the audio format.
People can listen to it while they're driving or exercising.
And they give you about 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes an hour of their time. Undivided attention, which is unheard of today. Even at conferences, if you go and talk for an hour, people are going to be on their Blackberries and iPhones. But podcasting does that, so very good. Now, personal productivity. What's the number one tool technique that you use to stay on top of things?
It's when it comes to, I think that one of the biggest challenges with this is not just work, but it's the integration of work. So just as you've heard from everybody you've talked to, some sort of integrated calendar. Google Calendar has radically changed our family's life. We've probably got 8 or 9 that integrates my job with my kids, my oldest kid's job, and my wife, and all that other stuff. From I've been a GTD guy. I went to a David Allen seminar almost before he was David Allen. Yeah, I mean, of course he was David Allen, but kind of before he was really big is when the book first came out, and I can say it changed my life. And Wunderlist, the app Wunderlist, has significantly changed our ability at home and for my work on juggling to-dos. It's cloud-based. Doesn't matter what device I'm at, I can get access. If I'm at the grocery store, all of a sudden, pop, get sweet potatoes. It's there. My wife did it from home, and instead of, did I print off the list? So anyway, that from a work and a personal life, Wunderlist has been great. From a work perspective, sometimes a client will insist that I use their tool if we're managing a project, or if I'm coaching someone to manage a project. So it could be anything from Microsoft Project to Clarity to Asana. I really have enjoyed learning Asana, ASANA. Sometimes it's Post-its. I mean, literally, for my own projects, if I'm not forced to from the outside, I actually kind of like an adaptation of Kanban, where I've got my backlog of what do I need to do, what's in process, what's completed, and tools can range from Excel to Post-its to Asana, sometimes even Wunderlist in that regard. But I'm definitely not if you're not using Microsoft Project, you're not doing real project management. I'm not that guy.
Me either.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Now, networking. What's the best way that you have found to network besides, writing a book?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I when we do things like this, Cesar, I think people would assume we're naturally extroverted, but I'm actually mildly introverted. And three people have significantly influenced me in this area. Keith Ferrazzi, who wrote a book called Never Eat Alone and Who's Got Your Back. Susan Cain, who wrote the book Quiet. And Adam Grant, who wrote the book Give and Take. And links to all those books I think would be really valuable to the listeners. Mm-hmm. But Ferrazzi, the Never Eat Alone, talks about you just leverage your time, foster relationships. And he has these things called lifeline relationships. We need these lifeline relationships with people. I think in a world where we just get so disconnected. And so Never Eat Alone basically says, use your lunch, use opportunities to do that. So anyway, one way I try to apply that is I try to meet somebody new every day. Whether it's at a company I work with all the time or just standing in line somewhere at a bank or whatever. And Susan Cain's, where I learned the benefit from her is that we hold up this extrovert ideal that you want to be a good project manager, you want to be a good leader, you got to be this extrovert, but it's so flawed. So many people who have changed the world have been introverts. And so she just talks about finding ways to recharge. So stretch yourself, but recharge. And so when I'm teaching all day, I get away at lunch. In fact, I even tell people, I say, I'd love to have lunch with you, but this is my recharge time. And then I just come back energized for the afternoon. After I'm done with you, I'll go and have some time where I'm just by myself before I go up with the family just to recharge. And if somebody listening to us is a little bit more introverted, get Susan Cain's book, or better yet, watch her TED Talk. It's Bill Gates said it's one of his favorite TED Talks, Susan Cain's TED Talk on it. And then Give and Take, let me just say this. Basically, the message of it is if you're a giver, you're going to be so much more successful. Mm-hmm. And Adam Grant does a great job of laying out how you can be a bad giver and actually get trampled and it actually hurts you career-wise. But when it comes to networking, here's an example. Cornelius Fichtner is one of the most giving people I know in our industry when it comes to sharing knowledge. When I started my podcast, I was just bugging the daylights out of him, asking him questions. I mean, he'd tell me the equipment he used. He'd tell me this, that. He's a very giving person. And that made a huge difference for my ability to get my podcast off the ground. From a networking perspective, just be a giver, help people, make problems go away. And if we do that in a way that truly, helps, to use the cliche, help them learn how to fish themselves.
Right.
It's amazing. And Adam Grant in Give and Take, I honestly think it's a must-read book for anybody in our industry. It applies to networking, but it applies to so many different ways. In so many different areas. So I guess beyond those resources, just learn to like people. Just learn to like people. And everyone's got a story. And even those people that drive us crazy, learn to like something about them. And I know you had the likeonomics discussion. That'd be a good one for someone to go back to and listen if they haven't listened to it. But if you just learn to like people, it's amazing how rich it adds to our experience in this human experience, our experience of leading teams and delivering.
Wow, that's awesome. Those books, the great resources. I haven't read any of them, so
get them on your list. I'm telling you, they're awesome.
I'm gonna add them to my list and also to the show notes here as well. And especially today when it's so easy to quote unquote meet people with the internet, we tend to look at names on LinkedIn as and we disconnect them from the person behind it. One of my favorite things to do is to go into like somebody who just connected with me on LinkedIn. Go and look at their resume and see some of the things they've done. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is like, they could write a book about this one line right here.
Right.
Then send them a note, say, hey, tell me about that. There's a guy, I probably can't say his name, but he was an engineer in Cuba. He's American, but he was part of some sort of humanitarian effort. Cool. And he said, I can tell you all about it. I just can't tell you who I am. You don't, isn't
that interesting?
And we just had this amazing.
But here's an interesting observation. He probably doesn't realize how amazing his story is, but to us, we look at it and we see it, and when you just have to ask a couple questions, and all of a sudden these stories come out, right?
Yeah, that and it's amazing, and then all of a sudden, people want to network with you because you're just interesting, and you're helping them, and I think that's. Yeah. What do you think about that? Like, the best way to network is to be a person that people want to network with.
Yeah.
Then it's effortless.
I gotta tell you, this is complete transparency, and it's a mistake. I think early on in my business, Cesar, I wanted to be viewed as smart. And so when I'd go into a client or I was having a meeting with executives, I just want to be smart. And what I realized later on is, who cares if you're smart if you're not helping them? I mean, really, seriously. And I think too many people in corporate America, they want to be smart talkers. One of my guests, Mike Roberto, was it his book? Yeah, it was his book. Great leaders don't take yes for an answer. Mm-hmm. They call them smart talkers. Actually comes from Bob Sutton's research out at Stanford. And what he says is, when you criticize people, when you shoot ideas down, you come off as really smart, but you don't fix anything. And so none of us should aspire, I think, to be viewed as smart. We need to be viewed as helpful, that we make problems go away. And I mean, that's why people are going to listen to your podcast, right? They're going to listen because they're like, man, I got some good stuff out of that. I invested that 30 minutes, that in this case, maybe we're going to be an hour and a half. Sorry, dude. But it's like if we help people, that will lead to opportunities for us, but lead to opportunities for them. I guess some of the most satisfying things from a leadership perspective is when we look back and we see people who are on our staff, who are on our project, and now they're off leading things. Mm-hmm. Right? And was that networking? Or was that just investing in relationships, which is really what networking really comes down to anyway, right?
Very good. Oh, wow. We should hold hands.
Oh, man, you and I were separated at birth, man. I love listening to you because I love your spirit in this.
Next time I'm in Chicago, we should go get coffee or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Andy, this has been great. It was a longer interview, but I think it was worth it. And I would like to have you back at some point to talk about maybe another talk that you've given. Maybe, I don't know, we should fire project managers or something.
You're right. Yeah.
But Andy, just for people who are listening, one thing I'd like to mention too. When I started the website and the podcast, I wanted to be able to offer resources to people, especially people trying to learn new things. And I looked around for a resource that would teach people the basics of project management, and then maybe later on something more advanced. And we connected that way because you have some training materials. And full disclosure here, I would not recommend something that I haven't used myself. So I actually went through the Essentials of Project Management class that you have. It was fantastic, and that's why I decided I need to have you on the show. And this is, I'm going to add a link to your classes on the show notes, and I also have it on my resource page on the website. So if you're looking for the listener, if you're looking for an introduction to project management, or if you already have that introduction and you want to go into more advanced concepts, I really recommend Andy's materials. And you can find that at pmforthemasses.com/PM classes, and it's going to get you redirected there.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and also for full disclosure, because we have this relationship, I am an affiliate of your program because I really believe in it. So if you do buy using that link, I get some coffee money.
And pay for your bandwidth here.
For my bandwidth, yeah. All right. So Andy, if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Probably the best value that I could add to them is they just go to the podcast site, which is peopleandprojectspodcast.com. And from there's links to my website and e-learning and things like that. But that's probably where I could add the most value for them.
Great. And you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, all those places?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I'll just add links.
And if it looks like the guy from Taxi, that's not me.
That's not you. Very good, Andy. Thank you so much, and we'll stay in touch, all right?
Thanks, Cesar. It's a real pleasure talking with you.
You are listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
So there you have it, my friends. I really enjoyed talking to him. It was I left that call really energized. And Andy talked about generosity, and he's probably one of the most generous people I've met in a while. I mean, he talked about he talked about Cornelius there, and he's right. But I would put him in the same basket. He has a wealth of knowledge, and he's always ready to help and share. After the interview, he sent me links and different things. And after the interview, after I stopped the recording, we kept on talking for a little while longer, and he's just top-notch guy. So again, you can visit the link pmforthemasses.com/PM classes and learn more about his programs and materials, especially if you're getting started in project management, or if you already are a project manager but you'd like to learn more advanced concepts as well. So it's really a one-stop shop if you want to improve your project management skills. Again, pmforthemasses.com/PM classes. Now, let's talk about the PM Flash blog. A few weeks ago, I was approached by Shim Muram, and honestly, I had heard of his blog and I had read a few articles, but I did not know. I couldn't put the name with the URL. And he's a project manager in Australia, and he emailed me with this idea that he had of an initiative, and he was basically trying to get a number of project manager bloggers to write a blog post with the same title to be released on the same day at the same time. And this day is coming up this week. And the name that was given to this is the PM Flash blog. It's a wordplay on flash mob. So when a bunch of people get together, on a train station and start dancing or something. So it's a bunch of project managers who will get together and write a blog post with the same title. So the day, again, is coming up this week. I think it's Wednesday night or Thursday morning. So I thought I'd bring Shim to the podcast today to tell us all about it. Hello, Shim. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you doing?
I am doing good, mate.
Fantastic.
So Shim, you sent me an email a few weeks ago with this proposal from, would you like to participate in this? And I looked at it, maybe, sure, let's do it, And at the time, I don't think he had a name. And then a few days later, you sent me an email saying that there's a lot of people on board, and it was going to be called the PM Flash blog.
That's right. Yeah.
So can you explain it to us what that is and what's happening?
So this idea has been in a stage of conception for quite some time in my mind, and it was really about creating a worldwide collaboration amongst project management bloggers, each presenting their own worldview on a given topic. And I think one of the issues I was having for a while was what would be a suitable topic that could get can get people going, could really get people to express their own views of the world and how they see things from a personal perspective. I didn't want to choose a topic that is overly professional as in terms of for instance, what is risk management or how do you manage issues on your project, because there are overly prescriptive, and you can almost like find, open a guide and then follow the guide, and that tells you what to do. I want people to bring out their own personality. So that's how this thing really came about. It started small, as you know, approaching a number of bloggers to see, basically test the waters to see if people would warm up to the idea. The response I received very early on was very positive, and that's when I started launching it in a bigger way, approaching bloggers I've already been in touch with around the world, and they've all said, "Yep, that's fantastic," and that's really where it started rolling sort of like right through. People approaching other bloggers that they've been in touch with, and basically the thing just basically grew and grew since then. And from a small start of having myself and then additional two, we now can be, now we have 67 bloggers who've committed to publish on the day, which is absolutely fantastic.
So just for the audience who's not familiar, so basically there'll be 67 bloggers that will produce a blog post with the same topic to be released at the same time.
That's right.
Wow.
And that's a bit of a challenge. So and I even the idea of using GMT time as the point of calibration amongst bloggers who come from various places around the world. So I understand you yourself, you're in Canada, but we've got bloggers from Portugal, from the UK, obviously from the US. We've got South Americans, we've got Australians, obviously. We've got Europeans, we've got Denmark. It's just it's an absolutely it's absolutely a worldwide event.
Mm-hmm. So what is the topic for the blog post?
So the topic is, what does project management mean to me? And initially the topic was slightly different. It was, what does project management mean to me? A project manager's sermon. Mm-hmm. And I've picked up the concept of a sermon because I wanted people to be emotional, to appeal to people's intelligence, but also appeal to people's emotions as well, and express things in a manner which you would normally only see expressed in religious sermons. Now, I'm not a religious person myself, and in fact, a number of bloggers came back to me and said, look, the whole idea of a sermon is something we are not very comfortable with. Again, because of the connotations it might raise with different people's perceptions of what the word sermon actually means. So we said, okay, look, if you're not comfortable with the word sermon, we'll just drop the sermon bit. But very much it's about what is project management for you? What does it mean to you? And that's really what it's going to be. I've my own post, which I've already written, and it's ready to go. I did keep the sermon concept in there, so I'm actually delivering it as if someone is delivering a sermon, talking to people in a almost like as a preacher, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to convince them of the idea that stands behind what they're trying to convince people to do.
Very, very interesting. And so you had this idea, and you brainstormed with a couple of bloggers, and then you how did you find, because when you sent it to me, I think there was already, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 bloggers that you emailed. How did you find all these people?
So look, over the years, I've started blogging about 4 and a half years ago, and the blogging community, or at least the blogging community around that deals with project management related issues, is fairly self-contained. It's not that huge. It's not like there are other topics which are hotter than project management, obviously, and carry a much wider crowd of bloggers interested in that topic. So over the years, I've just come to know quite a few of them. I've met some of them on discussions groups in LinkedIn. Quite a few of them I came across on Twitter. So basically, it has become almost like some people I already know by first and second name. Like we comment on each other's blogs, we write to each other's on Twitter and so on and so forth. So that's really how the whole thing started. But once I had the initial 20, as you say, they already knew other bloggers that they brought into the discussion. So they started promoting the idea themselves. They started sending those emails to other colleagues that they knew in the blogging world. Some expanded the invitation to bloggers who are not necessarily in project management, but people who are in agile, people who are business analysts, people who in related domains, whose reflection on project management is probably equally important as those who would be presented by project managers. So it would be actually absolutely interesting to see what other people think what project management is like from a perspective that is different to what project management or project managers might bring up.
Mm-hmm. Now, Shem, this is going to create a lot of content around the same topic, and not only that, you tapped into something here that's really interesting, because obviously, as we were just talking before the recording, it started to have a life of its own. There's I believe it's a Google Plus community. People are discussing things, and
That's right.
half the time you're not even there, but it's still going forward. So
it does. It's scary.
It's a thing of beauty. It's like a child.
It does. Yeah, for sure.
So do you have any ideas of what to do with this moving forward? Because I think you have something here.
Look, that's the $6 million question. I've been asked a number of times. People send me emails and say, this is a fantastic idea. What do we do with this next? And in all honesty, I haven't actually thought that far. I think the key thing for me, just in terms of how far, how far I can look into the future is the release date for this initiative is the 25th of September. At 1 o'clock GMT, and that's where we're going to have a flood of blog posts. Posts coming out, on air, and I think it's going to take a while for all participants to certainly read, a large chunk of them and realize what's on there. And I'm hoping that at least the immediate outcome of this will be that people will start collaborating with each other on ideas that are close to their heart. So I think a collaboration that involves 67 people is probably quite difficult to sustain over a long period of time. But I reckon that small groups of collaboration will arise from this, where people who are like-minded on certain topics might say, okay, look, we've got someone there whose ideas we find appealing. We think that it's an interesting concept we might want to explore with them further on, and they might bond and create those micro collaboration events that will spawn into different directions. I think it's difficult to foresee from where we stand now before the event how far this can go and which direction it might go. But I certainly can see that once the publication date is passed and people were able to review each other posts and see and find like-minded bloggers out there who they might want to collaborate in the future, then other events, not necessarily as grand and as big as this one, might spawn out as a byproduct of this. And if anyone else, if someone else is able to come up at the end of this exercise and say, look, we think we've got something here that we can actually take forward and turn it into a repeating phenomena, then certainly it's an idea which we collectively will need to explore. I certainly would not want to see myself as the bottleneck in terms of where this thing can possibly go. There are many other people out there. We've got, I would imagine, would have brilliant, fantastic, and grand ideas. And I would love to see people coming up with those ideas, not relying necessarily on just because I initiated the initiative, this exercise. I would like to see people taking charge and trying to grow this into something else in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can speak for myself, and I think a lot of people would share this opinion, but I would love to see you stay involved and be some sort of a lead. I think every parade needs a leader, and
sure,
I would love to see you continue to be involved with this, and I don't know, maybe turn this into a monthly thing or bi-monthly or I'd love to see this grow into actually, into something that is becomes almost like a brand, the PM Flash blog,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But Shim, are you still taking, let's say, applicants for this? Can other bloggers join in at this point?
Absolutely. Look, the publication date is on the 25th of September, 25th. Anyone can join right up to the last minute. It's an open event, provided that in effect there's no provision whatsoever. I mean, I would prefer if people want to join in, if they got in touch with me, they can link in with me using LinkedIn. They can search for me on Twitter. And I would be happy to submit them with all the information, all the details, all the background material, the intent, the technical details of how we all integrate, how we all interact together. Absolutely. And by the way, I'm still being contacted almost daily by people who are interested in getting more information. And the list grows almost daily by at least one to two additional bloggers. So I think we've got some more mileage to cover here. I think before we hit the D-Day, we're going to certainly pass the 70 bloggers. Hopefully it might even be 75. And so yeah, certainly if any of the listeners are interested in joining in, come on board, guys. This is a great opportunity. I think the exposure that all bloggers are going to receive from this initiative is going to be absolutely fantastic. It's going to be a boom in readership that you probably have not experienced for a long time, and it's a great opportunity to tap into other resources and other readership out there who have not been sort of like perhaps as enthusiastic and as excited about reading these blogs before. So yeah, come on, that's a great opportunity.
Very good. Now, Shim, give you an opportunity here to share about your blog. So where can people find your blog, and what do you blog about?
So my blog is called Quantum Leap. It's not spelled as quantum as the quantum leap that you will find in physics. It's quantum without the with the U somewhere, but it's called Quantum Leap, and I blog primarily about project management related matters. The line that guides me in my blog, so if you've got like a theme, if you want, that I'm trying to follow, is challenging established common wisdom. So I utterly I wouldn't use the word despise, but I just hate dogmas, and I try to challenge common perceptions that people have about things that relate to project management. So very early on, I had quite a large number of posts about the whole concept of project failures, and challenging the common thought that many projects fail. So I tackle this issue from a rational perspective. So that's very much the thing that guides me. So if someone says something silly, or if someone says something that is not well thought through, or if someone suggests something that is not grounded in observation, but rather is derived from emotion and just cognitive perception, then I challenge those things and try to bring them to the forefront. So it's at least to make people think, and the motto of my blog is think about it. Every post I publish, I finish with the word think about it. I want people to think, and really think for themselves, not take things for granted, not think about things just because other people told them to think about it. Not even, just because the PM book says something doesn't necessarily make it correct. Just because established methodologies suggest something doesn't mean that it's absolutely correct. You need to think beyond the books. Look at the various gray, the shades of gray that every domain has within it, and try to think for yourself what's right and what's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with project management. It's usually not either or, but both. And there's if people ask should we do A or B, there's always a C.
That's right. And one thing that I learned from someone on LinkedIn, he said that the usual answer should be it depends.
Right.
And it's really and that's the depends bit. That's what I'd like people to think about. Things are very rarely only black or white, and there are always shades of gray.
Yeah.
We need to bring to the forefront.
Yeah, when you voice an opinion, there is always a qualification, and then there's a caveat.
That's right, exactly. That's right. Yeah, spot on, mate.
Very good. All right, Shim. So I'm gonna add links to your blog, to your LinkedIn profile, on the show notes for this episode. So if people want to get in touch with you and they're listening right now, they can go to pmforthemasses.com/11, and all these links will be there. Thank you so much, Shim, and I look forward to your post.
Same here, Matt. Look, thanks very much for having me on your podcast. It's an absolute pleasure and honor, and I'm looking forward to listening to other podcasts in the future.
PM for the Masses podcast.
So there you go, guys. You can go to today's the episode notes for today's show at pmforthemasses.com/11, and you'll find the link there to his website where he talks about the PM Flash blog, and he's going to have links there to all the bloggers who are involved and to their contributions as well. So go to pmforthemasses.com/11 for 11. Now, before I go today, I'd like to tell you once again about the first PM for the Masses webinar, which is coming up this Friday. And for this webinar, I will have my friend and website developer, Dustin Hartzler. And we will basically show you how to start your PM blog or website the right way using WordPress. And we'll show you how to get hosting, how to install WordPress on your hosting account. And then we will show you the 10 things that you must do after creating your blog or website using WordPress. And Dustin is really a WordPress expert and also a fellow podcaster. He has a podcast on WordPress, and he has, I don't know, like 130 episodes. It's crazy. He does it every week. He has a huge following, and he's the guy I go to when I need help with my WordPress sites, including pmforthemasses.com. He has helped me there a few times to get this or that done. So if you have a blog or a website, or you're thinking of starting one soon, you can register for free for this webinar at pmforthemasses.com/webinar. And I understand I'm giving you a lot of URLs this episode. But again, if you go to the main, the show notes for this episode, which is pmforthemasses.com/11, you can find all these links there. So you don't have to memorize this as you're listening. Just go to the show notes and you'll find these links there. Now, the webinar will start live on September 27th at 10 a.m. Eastern time zone, which is GMT -4. So just you can do the math there based on where you are in the world. We found that 10 a.m. is a good compromise. People out in Australia, it's about midnight for them. It's early evening for people in the UK and Europe. So it kind of works out that way. So if you cannot attend, if the timing doesn't work for you, or you're not available, don't worry about it. We will record the webinar, including the video and the audio part, and we'll make it available to you for later viewing. So again, go over to pmforthemasses.com/webinar, and hopefully I'll see you Friday. So that's it for today. Again, I'd like to personally thank the people who have been leaving reviews for the show in iTunes. And since the last episode, I'd like to especially thank Ben from House Planning Help out of the UK. He left me a review there, and he also has a great podcast for people who are building their own home. Okay, and you can visit his website at houseplanninghelp.com. And also a great review that I had from Germany by a person named Ali Reza, I believe that's how you pronounce it, who listens to both the PM for the Masses podcast and the Construction Industry podcast, which are my two shows. And again, if you'd like, so first of all, thank you, Ali Reza. It was a great review, and he mentions the fact that we talk about PM concepts, which is more like something to learn, and then we talk about the personal side of the project manager. So I believe the words he used was, the show is both education, it's both it has to do with education and entertainment, which is exactly what I want to do here. So thank you for that. And again, if you'd like a shout out here on the show, as well as help the podcast reach more people, please consider leaving an honest review and rating by going to pmforthemasses.com/iTunes. So that's it. I hope you didn't mind the longer episode this week. And until next week, remember that life is a project and you are the manager. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
PMforthemasses.com